I swear, every real estate investor has that one phone call. The one where your stomach drops before the person on the other end finishes a sentence. Mine came the first month as a landlord of one of my 4 unit properties. My manager just called and said, Johnny, water is pouring out of a light fixture. Not a sink, not a toilet, not a freaking pipe, a freaking light fixture. And that was the beginning of a disaster that would cost me nearly $25,000. But here's the crazy thing, that wasn't even my worst real estate horror story. I've had a tenant flood an entire building. I've been sued. I've had an insurance company drop me. I spent thousands of dollars replacing something that wasn't even broken. And if you think real estate investing is just collecting checks, HGTV level renovations, buckle up. Because this is what actually happens after you buy the property. So I had a tenant destroy part of my building with a toilet. This happened during my first month of owning rental property. I had purchased a 4 unit in Suffolk. At the time, I owned 8 total units and was serving as an inspector in the Navy. So when my PM called about water pouring from a light fixture, I immediately knew this was bad, really bad. When they got inside the building and started investigating, they discovered that the upstairs tenant had removed their toilet, completely removed, then left work without shutting off the water. Now, before anybody jumps to conclusions, this wasn't a DI repair gone wrong. This was a tenant going through a mental health crisis. Unfortunately, that crisis happened inside my building. For roughly 2 hours, water poured through that property, down walls, across floors, through ceilings, in electrical fixtures. By the time someone got there to shut the water off, the damage was done. Downstairs unit looked like a waterfall had gone through it. Ceilings ruined, light fixtures ruined, kitchen damaged, bathroom damaged. Then we inspected the upstairs unit. There was damage there too. Final score, 14K downstairs, 5K upstairs. 2 months of lost rents. Eviction costs, clean out costs, nearly 25K done. Or nearly 25K gone just like that. And here's what makes the story even crazier. I was a chief engineer. I understand plumbing system, mechanical, risk management, preventive maintenance. None of it mattered because the problem was the building. The problem was human behavior. And that was one of the first lessons in real estate that I learned. You can inspect every roof. You can inspect every HVAC unit. You can inspect every water heater. You cannot inspect what's happening inside someone's mind. That's where I learned my cash reserves matter. Today, I keep substantially larger reserves because I know will eventually happen. Not maybe, will. Speaking of unexpected, let me tell you about the time we got sued. That loss cost me my insurance company. This one started with something we already knew about. We own a 6 unit building. The fire escape is about 20 years old, still functional, still usable, but it's aging. And we noticed it. We document it. We put it on the repair schedule with my contractor. And then Mother Nature decided she had other plans. Bad weather delayed the project. The whole area froze. This was a metal fire escape. The replacement got pushed back. Before the repairs could happen, a tenant was using the fire escape as their normal way in and out of the building. One of the stairs, tenant injured their soul, injured, and almost immediately we got served. Now at that point, there's not much you can do. You hand everything over to the insurance company and hope for the best. Thankfully, the claim never made it to court. Insurance company handled it. Case dragged on for a few months, but eventually it was resolved. At that point, I thought the nightmare was over, but I was wrong. Because shortly after the claim was settled, the insurance company dropped us. Gone. No renewal, no second chance, no discussion. Just dropped. Now suddenly, I'm shopping for insurance on a 6 unit building that has had a liability claim. If you ever had to do that, you know exactly how fun that conversation is. Eventually, we found a replacement policy at double the cost. Our insurance expense jumped to around $7,000 a year. And honestly, the repair bill wasn't the painful part. The lawsuit wasn't even the painful part. The painful part was losing the insurance carrier because suddenly something you've relied on for years just disappears. and now you're scrambling. That experience changed how I prioritize repairs. If it's cosmetic, it can wait. If it's safety related, it jumps to the head of the line immediately. Because once someone gets hurt, the conversation changes completely. But even that wasn't the weirdest problem I ran into. The weirdest one was involved a water heater that wasn't broken. The water heater on one of my duplexes was a tankless. It was installed when we first bought the property. One winter, one of them failed. No big deal. At least that's what we thought. Call the contractor, replace the unit, move on. Simple. The new one gets installed, everything checks out, contractor says it works, system tests out fine. Problem solved. Except the tenants still don't have hot water. Now I'm irritated. Here's irritated. Everybody's pointing fingers at each other because the brand new unit is supposedly working, yet the problem still exists. So we keep digging, and eventually we discover something I would have never guessed. The water heater wasn't the problem. The incoming water temperature was. During the winter in DC, the water entering the property was so cold that the tankless system couldn't raise the temperature high enough to provide hot water people expected. Well, the equipment was operating exactly as designed. The design itself was the issue. Think about that. I spent money replacing equipment that wasn't actually the root cause. That lesson stuck with me because in real estate, the thing causing the problem isn't always the thing you're looking at. Sometimes you have to keep pulling the thread till you find the real issue. Funny thing is, none of these investments were bad investments. The fourplex was a good deal. Six unit was a good deal. Duplex, good deal. Problems came after the purchase. That's what nobody talks about. Everybody wants to discuss cap rates, cash flow, equity, appreciation. Nobody wants to talk about getting sued. And nobody wants to talk about tenant meltdowns. Nobody wants to talk about spending money on repairs that don't fix a problem. But that's the reality of owning real estate long enough. If you stay in the game, eventually something weird happens. Then something expensive happens. Then something that keeps you up at night happens. Investors who survive aren't the ones who avoided every problem. They're the ones who expect problems, keep reserves, and keep moving forward when things do go sideways. Because if you're in this business long enough, you're going to collect stories. These just happen to be three of mine.